What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone in between, and welcome to another old video. So, on a previous channel that never existed, all the way back in 2018, I did a lot of important videos for me that were like exploring myself, understanding myself, being able to plumb the depths of who I am, who I was, and my own gay experience. And the very first video I did in all of this was my coming out video. And since that video is now lost to the seas of time, I have decided to remake it. And what better place to remake it than here in the gym, the exact place where I filmed it the very first time. Now, obviously, they've changed the setup here. It's a little bit different. It's going to be fun and such, but I really want to like recapture that old energy. And hopefully this time it will not be a 38-minute video because I know that was crazy. So let's get into it, okay?
Now where do you think you're going? Thought it was wrong to come over. My daddy won't be home. It's dark. Now where do you think you're going? Thought it was wrong to come over. Your mama says I'm no good boy.
To get into this story, we really do have to get into my full past, which is just kind of a normal life. We moved around a lot, but you know, I went to schools mostly from like kindergarten up to 8th grade. Then we moved to Las Vegas. Well, actually, no, before we moved to Las Vegas, like in 5th grade in Arizona, I was having trouble keeping up. Dysgraphia was making it hard for me to handwrite assignments in class, and we basically were pushing for accommodations to make it easier for me. The school wasn't very obliging, and my mom just decided it was the right time to take me out and start homeschooling me. And she did. And that lasted from 5th to 8th grade. And during that time, I really didn't socialize that much. We tried like a youth group in one of the churches in Vegas, and that was kind of pants. Like, the kids were kind of sucky, and I just didn't find any appeal in that. I built up some stuff with online communities and such. That's how I first ended up finding out about what gay was. I was on a forum at the time, livewire.com. I'm sure someone's heard of it, someone ancient like me. Kids probably have no idea. The website's gone now, and I can't even find it very often on things like Archives and Wayback Machine. Sometimes it'll pop up, but not very often. But that website is kind of where I first heard about being gay, and where I first heard people talking about it and living it, and it was kind of a shock because this was something that had never crossed into my mind before. And I ended up finding out the things that had, come up in my life were related to this whole gay thing, and I had just never known it. Like, my mom had said she didn't like watching Rock Hudson movies, and I ended up finding out Rock Hudson was gay. I was like, oh my god, did she just like not like Rock Hudson because he's gay? Turns out, like, honestly, the movies were just on TV all the time when she was growing up, and she got to see them so many times that she was sick of them and she didn't enjoy them anymore. But at the time, that's what I thought. But on the other hand too, there were, the special gays, as there are, I think, for just about anyone out there. The gays who are bizarrely accepted and tolerated by families for whatever reason. For my mom and her mom in the past, it was of course like Liberace. Everyone adored Liberace. He had such a good relationship with his mother and things like that. But finding out on Livewire what gay was opened up a tidal wave because I started looking at things I hadn't looked at before. But also, too, the funny thing is I got to realize the things I was looking at really meant something else. At the time, I had a bit of a bodybuilding fetish, a muscle fetish. Like, it was bad, 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 bad. And it turned out a lot of this was, me being gay. But because I didn't know what gay was, I just thought, I just really like big, muscly bodies. I just really like bodybuilders. I just want to be one. And this took me into where I think quite a few people end up starting out. the muscle morph forums and such, where people were writing a lot of stories about guys just like getting huge, like unimaginably huge muscles, like instantly, all this sort of stuff. And like, not all of the website was sexual. Sometimes it was like, just the muscle stuff focused. And that's mostly where I had been. I was just reading this stuff, enjoying it, like getting excited, but not knowing why. And now I sort of had a context. And then eventually they opened up their X-rated section for like all members and such. And that's when I started seeing the sex side of things. But actually, funnily enough, one of the main stories that really like awakened something for me wasn't even explicit and wasn't technically even a true on like muscle morph type story. Like this, there was a lot of development, and of course the guy was growing way more than he should, but it was done a little bit slower, and the emphasis on everything was mainly this relationship between these two guys. And it was a cute sort of like budding high school romance type thing, just with one of the guys being a sort of athletic muscle god who was developing and growing in all these awesome ways. And just the visuals that they created with their story were actually really good. Just like him taking off his singlet after a wrestling match, it's sort of slinking down his hips, showing off his wide V taper, and like, it was gorgeous. And finally having a context to know why I was being attracted to this, why I was getting off to this, was mind-blowing. And I started going into other things, delving into other things. And funnily enough, like, me being gay is how I got such a good taste in music, because one of these websites posted like pictures of men and such, like, it was very generic, very PG rated. They had all these pictures of muscle men, just like built guys, various, that everyone would upload. And I ended up finding it gawked on that website because of these shirtless pictures at the time, which were gorgeous, and sent me down a path of horniness and also extreme body dysmorphia, but we'll get into that later. And yeah, like, all of this sort of stemmed up from that. But this was taking over from like when I was 13 all the way up to 14 and middle of 15. And then we moved here to New Mexico. And that is really when I believe the next full-on chapter of my life started, because it went from just like exploring, discovering porn, discovering gay sex, discovering that I could put things in my butt and it could feel good, discovering that I could play with my penis and it kind of felt all right, and it was allegedly supposed to make me do something, but it didn't, until I found a way that it did, and it wasn't that great, but it made me feel better. And again, that is also a story for another video. You see, the thing is, moving to New Mexico happened to coincide with like the true height of my sexual awakening, when I had really started to discover what it was I liked, what I wanted to explore, and worst of all, that I had the means to start exploring it. For me, this manifested in getting a cell phone, one of the nice little chonky Nokias where you were charged by the text, and finding a nice little website, which is no longer still around, where you could eventually essentially post your ad for hookups or dates, and people would respond. Normally, this was a trial run on this website, and all communications happened on it. They didn't allow you to put emails in your messages, but there was essentially like a little hack where you could get your email, but like hidden into it. And this was essentially how I managed to do every little hookup I did with that website. And then eventually I found squirt.org, or is it .com, and I used them as well. And yeah, basically I started being sexually active pretty much as soon as we moved into New Mexico. And from 15 to 16, all of my sexual encounters were through websites, through Craigslist now and again. And yep, that was me. Still isolationist, still not around any peer groups. We moved here, we had to wait a certain amount of time for me to become a full-on proper citizen. And then I enrolled into the GED section of the college year. Right out of the 8th grade in homeschooling, I jumped into this GED program, passed through, no problem, no remedials required or anything, and I jumped right into taking college courses. And from 16 all the way up until, honestly, 28. That was my normal. In terms of dating, there was a guy when I was 16. He was also 16, and ironically also the only person I have ever been with who was actually directly in my age range. That was cute. It was mostly about sex, but we were also like the young teenager type, so we made it sappy and cute and all that. But it didn't last long. In fact, as soon as I didn't fuck him on the first night, he pretty much dumped me. But outside of him, there were not really many opportunities. I was really only fucking guys who were from out of town when we went to Albuquerque for the weekends to buy food and stuff. So that was my sexual release and, in essence, my gay release. And this continued onwards until we stopped going to Albuquerque because it was going to be too much money around 2014. Maybe before then, actually, like 2012, I think. So when I was about 22 is when we finally stopped going out to Albuquerque altogether. And my sexual relations pretty much got relegated to what was happening, in town. That was more Craigslist. Eventually, I got a phone around 2014, I think, and that's when I downloaded Grindr for the first time, and that was the history. But the point is, everything was sexual for me. I never got a chance to do relationships or really get to know anyone who was gay because I was isolating myself to stay in the closet. It's obvious what the question is going to be. Why are you so isolated in the first place? Why did you feel the need to totally hermit yourself this way? And the answer, as I'm sure the answer is for a lot of gay people's weird behaviors when they were closeting themselves, would be the father person. I hate saying that word. But essentially, yeah, he was fully the reason why I was going to such extremes to closet myself. The whole reason we moved to this town is because he wanted to be a professor in a small local community. That is annoying. And we moved here, and he started teaching at the college. And as I said before, shortly after moving here, I started going to the college, and that essentially was the thing. I talked to some people a little bit at first and started noticing the trend of me telling people things, saying things in confidence, and realizing eventually that these things I was saying and doing such were getting back to him, and he was bringing it up at home, using it against me, talking, being generally an ass about stuff. And I very quickly learned that I couldn't really trust anyone in this town because he knew everyone, and he was the sweet, lovable, kind guy that could, wrap anyone around his finger into believing he wasn't a manipulative, shitty-ass piece of crap. So, yeah, that was really what fully on facilitated my turning into a hermit and isolating myself to such an extreme. Just trying to be protected from someone who could get anything, any sort of information on me like that. There was no real safe space or safe haven outside of the internet. So I went full-on closeting mode. I went full-on hermit mode. I didn't socialize. I didn't have friends. I didn't go places. I went to school. Later on, I started going to the gym. And then I went home. And that was it. Literally for all of my life, from the 15 when we moved here, straight up until 24 to 25. Then I started hanging out with a few people a little bit. It was mostly me taking late midnight walks and then getting involved with a certain crowd. And then later on, I actually did make two very important, very different friends. And those are both like their own sort of stories, but 24 to 25 is when I started coming out in the sense of having people know I was gay at all. I still wasn't really saying anything. I wasn't going out in public. I wasn't talking to a bunch of people. But I was starting something. Fast forward a little bit. It is now 2008. I mean 2018. 2018. The sperm donor had died the previous year. My mom and I were doing quite well. Things had improved when he died because we weren't being saddled with grotesque, overpriced hospital bills. There was a life insurance payout. She wasn't struggling because of a bare bones, tiny little social security check because of the way that he abused her and manipulated her into working for him without pay for several decades. But again, that's all stories for another time. Essentially, I thought I was comfortable. I thought I was fine. I thought I was probably never going to come out. And then that one friend I mentioned, the one that turned out to be crappy, wanted to set me up with someone. Someone cute, someone kind of nice. And I was kind of into this guy. And I thought, you know what? This could be worth it. This could be worth the risk, worth a shot. And I decided to try it. But before I tried it, I had to come out. I had tried the year before. Ollie Alexander had done this wonderful documentary called Growing Up Gay, which I'm going to be reacting to later on. And I loved watching this. It was valuable, insightful, and I managed to wriggle it into our watching rota to see my mom's reaction to it. And she liked it. She thought it was very good. She got emotional at some of the bits where it was important to be emotional. And I really thought this was going to be my chance. I was ready, I was poised, and it just didn't work for me. So flash forward to 2018, I decided to try again. I'm gonna do it this time, and I am very, very poised and planning everything out. We watched, what did we watch? It was something uplifting, I know that much. It was something like kind of good and positive. And then I followed it up with Coming Out, which I might do a react to again as well. It is a documentary specifically about the gay rights movement in Scotland, about their progress from going to being one of the worst countries to be gay in, to reaching a pinnacle sort of equality and rights progress to where it is now considered to be one of the safest places to be gay. This documentary went kind of dark in some areas. I wasn't fully prepared for that. I had watched it before, but I forgot that it had gone through highs and lows in the way it did. But ultimately, it does have a happy and satisfying ending. I almost chickened out again at the end of this. Like, my mom liked it, she was happy. She said a few things that went kind of, and I was just about to break. We ended up watching Turner Classic Movies. A commercial came on with one of the actors, and Mom was being, oh wow, it's another gay, blah blah blah. Not in a bad way, but like, oh look, it's another. And I just let out. I was crying, I was trying to tell her, I was sobbing, and eventually I just said, I'm gay. And she took it well. She did well. She was supportive. She was hugging me, saying, oh, I don't care, blah, blah. And it felt like such a massive relief. It felt like everything coming apart, crumbling around me in a good way. Just the shell I had built myself over the years, this castle of secrets that I had shrouded myself in and never allowed myself to get out of, was finally gone, and there was really nothing like holding me back in any way. Afterwards, there were some things, and like I'm gonna say, my mom is old, okay? She is not just like of a past generation. This woman is in her 70s, okay? She grew up in the 50s and 60s. So honestly, she is what I think most people would now would think of as a grandmother, maybe even a great grandmother for some people. So that context, I think, is important to understand where she was. Now, one of the things is she was like upset because she spent all her time planning for me to have grandchildren, to get married, and all this, and now that was gone, and she's like, why did I have to waste my time with that? Because you lied to me. I didn't lie to you, Mom. Yes, you did. It was a lie by omission. It's like, first of all, you're not entitled to any aspect of my life. You're not entitled to my penis or any of the sperm in it, so that's all on you. And, but I kind of get where she was coming from on some areas, like purely in the sense of as a parent, as someone who has kids and wants things to happen, has like plans and all this. I kind of get that, and I can't be too upset with it. Essentially, that was it. I came out to my mom. She was the only family I had that really mattered in that sense. So after that, there really wasn't anyone, and it just became less a thing of having to come out and more a sense of just having to be honest in my presentation, in how I went forward. And it was honestly kind of fun. Be able to just look at people and say, yeah, I'm gay. Be able to look at people and say, yeah, I wish I had a boyfriend. Being able to not have to hide things, mince words, be careful about the expressions I used and how they related to my sexuality, to my orientation, to any of it. It was free and lovely and beautiful, and it's only got better since then. Yeah, I'm alone because I'm in a small town with very few gays who are actually out or willing to be in a relationship here, or wanting to stick around in this town, or not already in a relationship. There's a kind of weird aura to this, and essentially there is a lot of middle ground, and things have been unusual for me. There's a lot of stories to tell, but coming out was an important, integral step in me being truly happy and being able to actually have a chance at achieving happiness. I wouldn't change it for the world, except maybe to have come out earlier. So yeah, this was me talking about my coming out story. Again, if you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe. I will be making a whole bunch of gay-themed videos throughout all of Pride Month. And of course, remember, life always gets better as long as you work at it, a brick by brick. See ya!